This is a Getty podcast. Hey, I'm Jaime, host of ReCurrent, a Getty podcast. On ReCurrent, I explore the hidden cultural stories all around us. The stories that live in photographs, archives, and everyday places. Season 2 is out now with all 6 episodes available, and I wanted to share an episode with you here today. On this episode, Backlot and Barrio, I spend time with photographer George Rodriguez, whose camera captured 2 sides of Los Angeles, Hollywood backlots and Los Angeles' East Side, documenting celebrity culture while staying rooted in community and resistance. If you'd like to hear the rest of the season and explore more stories like this, you can find ReCurrent wherever you listen to podcasts or at getty.edu/podcast/recurrent.
You could be somewhere like in East LA at a school walkout, and then you come back, and then in a half an hour, now you're working on Hollywood magazines, and they're not aware of the other situation. They're totally different worlds.
That's photographer George Rodriguez, the most influential Southern California photographer you likely haven't heard of until now. He's talking about shooting Hollywood on one roll of film and the Latino experience on the next. Hello, my name is Jaime, and welcome to ReCurrent. If you haven't heard of George Rodriguez, that's okay, because before this story, I hadn't either. Now, I want you to imagine this. I'm at lunch with Idure Alonso, the head of modern and contemporary art at the Getty. We're talking about possible topics for ReCurrent's new season, and in between bites, she asks, "You know George Rodriguez?" My first thought was, yeah, I know a couple George Rodriguez's, but probably not the one you are talking about. So I say no. And then, boom, she gives me a crash course. The East LA walkouts, the Chicano moratorium, farm workers marching with Cesar Chavez and the UFW, then a hard cut to Hollywood, red carpets, studio lots, and faces you might know and recognize like Michael Jackson, NWA, Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, even Marilyn Monroe. And I was hooked, and I needed to know more.
My name is George Rodriguez, and I was born here in LA, actually in South Central.
George is born in 1937, and not long after that, his dad opens a shoe repair shop on Skid Row. The shop is downstairs and the family in the back. By the late 40s, around 12, George is back in South Central LA. While attending Fremont High, George is in need of an elective. A friend suggests a photography course because he heard it was easy. And it turns out that George loves it and begins putting in hours of practice, getting as much experience as he can. Then, one small favor for a friend changes everything.
What happened exactly was a friend of mine that I was in school with, he needed a ride to Hollywood, so I gave him a ride. And then I had luckily parked in front of a photo studio, and I saw this guy setting up to take some photographs. And I went in and talked to him, and that man was Sid Avery.
Sid Avery was one of Hollywood's go-to photographers in the 1950s and 60s. Famous for candid offset portraits and photo essays that ran in magazines that were on nearly everyone's coffee table across the country. Magazines like Life, Look, Collier's, and the Saturday Evening Post. His subjects spanned Audrey Hepburn, James Dean, Humphrey Bogart, Elizabeth Taylor, and more.
Coincidentally, he was starting a photo lab, so I went and applied to work, and I got a job there working in the Hollywood area.
Famous Hollywood names start to stack up as the work increases.
I guess he liked me, so he would have me assist him on shoots he would do. And like I say, we went to Lucille Ball's house, and like I say, I was only about 18 years old, and I loved it, But then after a while, you take it for granted, having conversations with Michael Jackson and Jim Morrison, Jimi Hendrix. Janis Joplin, you don't think about it. Yeah, until later do you realize that how special that is.
The origin story is set. A kid from South Central, trained at Fremont, hustling in labs and on sets. But things are about to change for him. He doesn't know it yet, but the frame is starting to shift.
I remember when I worked at this law firm publishing company, if I knew of things going on, I would leave at lunchtime and go to East LA and shoot the stuff.
March of 1968. George is now working at the photo lab at Columbia Pictures, which publishes celebrity pics like Frank Sinatra and Warren Beatty, and movie premieres like Bye Bye Birdie and Breakfast at Tiffany's. But across town, students from Wilson, Garfield, Lincoln, Roosevelt, and Belmont high schools walk out. They're protesting overcrowded schools, scarce resources, and a bias against Mexican-American students. It became a defining action of the Chicano movement, which was a civil rights wave led by Mexican-Americans to win better schools, labor rights, representation, and control over their own story.
You could be somewhere like in East LA at a school walkout, and it's, you're immersed in like 100% Chicano-Mexican environment, and then you come back and in a half an hour, now you're working on Hollywood magazines, and they're not aware of the other situation, and they really don't care, and they don't get it.
Speaking to George, something clicks for me. Culture is made and kept by the people who show up. George did, and saved what might have been forgotten. He was there, documenting the movement, yes, and also participating by documenting it. Researching this episode, I poured through the 2018 monograph, Double Vision, which cataloged George's career. I was surprised to find picture after picture that I recognized from my old Chicano studies textbooks. Photographs of a requiem procession for Robert F. Kennedy the day after he died that ran down Brooklyn Avenue to East LA College. Robert Kennedy was a big supporter of Cesar Chavez and the United Farm Workers, or UFW, so his death was a big deal for Mexican Americans. I find photographs of the Chicano Moratorium, the anti-Vietnam War protests led by Mexican Americans, and photographs of the United Farm Workers Organization and Delano in the Central Valley, the boycotts, hunger strikes, and the UFW's continuous organizing along Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta. Huerta would go on to say that George's photos helped bring people to the cause, and that he understood it because he was part of the community.
I realize now that, that what I lived through is actually history.
He took as many shots as he could out of fear that nobody else would. And he did so with the same care, attention, and artistry he used when taking celebrity portraits. The originals, many are now at the Getty Research Institute. Hello. Hola, good. I'm at the Getty Research Institute with curator Idure Alonso, and we're going through George Rodriguez's photos.
It's just like a quick,
we face 30 boxes full of decades' worth of George's contact sheets, negatives, and images.
And then we can go over all this afterwards.
You can see the craft in each of his photos. And that's part of why these pictures live here. Not just for what they show, but how they show it. The years on sets taught George to read light fast, to compose in chaos, and to wait for the breath between action and after. The same eye that could flatter a movie star found the glow on a hand-painted sign in a protest, and the anger on a marcher's face. He brought studio craft to the sidewalk, and it shows. The frames are beautiful, human, precise.
For me, it was like everything as a whole. I think he just wanted to document what was happening for him, or maybe thinking on the future, but at the time it was just for him.
In one photo, white helmeted police stand over a teen protester beaten with batons in East LA. Another shows a sign that says Roosevelt Chicanos demand justice. And in another, a march led by Chicano activists, Brown Berets.
Also the depiction of East LA and Pico Rivera this is the 60s, this is the 70s. And even also these depictions of kids and the people in East LA. In the case of George Rodriguez, he's Mexican American, and he's actually the first Chicano artist to enter the collection.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
powerful.
Very powerful, yeah.
Hearing first lands hard. Really? The first one? And also, finally. It's powerful to stand with Getty's first Chicano archive. In big institutions, it can be hard to find your own heritage reflected. I work here, and even for me, it's not always obvious where my culture fits. But I find resonance in these boxes. I ask you, Dure, why George's archive is here.
You would encounter in this archive something that is not usually found in archives. So usually when you see photographs of LA in this time period, what you see is the west side. You don't see the east. Two different universes.
In the archival boxes, it isn't just celebrities and protest. There are records of daily life, kids after school, storefronts on a Sunday, neighbors on the block. As George puts it, you're photographing the politics, sure, but behind the politics, people live full lives.
The people, they don't realize that they're heroes. They're just trying to make a living. That's just like me. I was taking pictures, and some of their stuff is very powerful. And that's what I knew that I had to do it because, I thought nobody else was doing it.
Culture, images, stories, memory is safeguarded by people long before an institution gets involved. George's approach to documenting and capturing his culture and community is vital and alive today. I drive to Santa Ana to meet photographer and educator William Camargo and see the legacy of George Rodriguez in action.
Hey, how you doing?
My name is William Camargo. I was born in Santa Ana but was raised in Anaheim. My first introduction to photography was in high school. I was just actually trying to get an easy A. And it just turned out that I enjoyed photography quite a bit.
Already, I hear echoes of George's story, chancing into a career in pursuit of an easy A. And there are more similarities, celebrities by day and social movements by night.
I mean, I was doing a lot of music photography too. And once in a while, I was like stringing for like a photo agency. Like these red carpets where like, I would always get these assignments that are like the premiere of this movie in Beverly Hotel. And then like the afternoon was like a protest like in downtown, right?
But William sees George's impact in another project.
The book I'm finishing right now is probably one of the big influences from George too, right? So it's called Origins and Displacement. Like
it's a portrait of Anaheim you don't see on postcards.
A lot of history was hidden or was not told. I never really kind of learned about it until I was like reading all these alternative like newspapers, right? Where it's like where I first encountered these archives and I'm like just documenting my own community, right? Like walking around, photographing friends, photographing family, photographing like folks I just like was meeting as well. Like, people were hitting me up from Instagram being like, hey, come to my neighborhood. Like, I'll show you around.
And the work continues. William in Anaheim doing work inspired by George. And there are now countless other Chicano photographers holding up their corners of the city. Photographers like Chito Banda, Frankie Orozco, Suitcase Joe, and Esteban Oriol. We're in safe hands. Our culture, our community is being recorded by this new generation of photographers. In the next few months, George is preparing to move out of his downtown studio space where he's been for 25 years. This is one reason why his archive is moving to the GRI now. But even as George prepares to hang up his camera, his work isn't vanishing. It's multiplying, and this is what makes him one of the most influential Southern California photographers, even if this is the first you're hearing of his story.
So I set up things so we can look.
Back at Getty, Idura and I return to the boxes of George's photographs, thinking about how images move through hands, families, and time. They're being cataloged not so that they can be sealed off, but so that they can be findable. And if we do this right, they're returnable. Pop-ups in schools and rec centers, library showings, neighborhood talks, and digitized sets people can search. Ways to access their own history, their photos, their culture. They're part of LA's story. Preservation is step 1, circulation is step 2, and inspiring the next generation is 3.
Now the photography department is putting together a show on Chicano photographers, and George is going to be part of it. So, in my opinion, I would like to see these photos going back to East LA or South LA in many cases, because there's a lot of photographs of the kids in South LA at different high schools. And how can you work with the kids today and show them these photographs and what happened and make them think about history or what is happening now or the usage of images today? Because I think they're very powerful. And even though they're like 60 years old, or they're still very relevant today, because many of these issues were never resolved.
Knowing that Getty is preserving George Rodriguez's archive, Getty's first Chicano archive, means images of people who look like my family now live in Getty's archives. And George's photographs belong here not only because of what they catalog, but because of how they're built. Light, line, timing, and made from inside the community. He didn't parachute in, he belonged. He knew how to read the noon sun, how to snap a crowded scene so that it reads clear and human, and how to wait for the breath between chant and silence. And he knew how to see people, leaders, workers, kids after school, as neighbors first. That's the human care that you feel in each frame. Writing this episode, I kept turning to the sun-faded photo of my dad that I keep on my desk. He's on a break while working in the fields of the Central Valley. No credit line, no caption, just him drinking water, looking straight into the camera. That picture is a treasure in my family. It reminds us of the sacrifices made for a better life. But artistically, I can admit it leaves something to be desired. That's one reason I've been so drawn to George's story, because of how he brought studio chops to the street and the farm. That craft is the difference between a snapshot and a photograph that enters a record. But history isn't an either or. These images have different homes and are equally necessary. My dad's picture is our private record. It's a family memory, inherited meaning. George's pictures are a record the public can see in Los Angeles and beyond, so other Chicanos can search, learn, and recognize themselves and their heritage. One keeps a family, the other helps keep a people visible. When I ask George about his legacy, he admits it's hard to grasp. But he says it's only later that you realize you did something special.
You know, if I can do it, because my beginnings are very, very minimal. I mean, like I say, we lived on Skid Row and was raised in South Central. If I can do it, anyone can do it. And don't let anybody tell you you can't do it, because they did tell me I couldn't do it. You don't want to listen to those people because they don't know you. You may be special.
ReCurrent is written and produced by me, Jaime, with creative support from Zoe Goldman. Our executive producer is Christopher Sprinkle. To see the photos, head to getty.edu/podcast/recurrent for some of my favorites. The museum has 41 of George Rodriguez's images digitized and viewable. There's a link in the show notes. And for transcripts, images, and additional resources, visit getty.edu/podcast/recurrent.